If you could get all three of us in there from that angle, probably. You want to get? Can you get all three of us in there with the screen
From that angle?
I will certainly try.
I would think so with that lens. Yeah.
Let's see here.
Those are like $800.
Yeah.
All right. There you go. Can we tell her that we're doing this? Yeah.
Tanya, we're smiling for a photo that you're going to be in.
Okay, good to know.
We'll see how that works.
All right.
Right.
Well, good morning, everyone. I call this meeting of the NCUA Board to order. In addition to those joining us in the boardroom, I want to note for the record that today's meeting is open to the public through a live webcast. Before we begin our business, I understand that Board Member Otska has some brief remarks. Board Member Otska?
Thanks, Chair Harper. I just wanted to say thank you to you and the Vice Chair and the NCUA staff for their well wishes as I welcome the newest addition of my family last month. Everybody has been really kind and supportive, so I just wanted to thank you all. Appreciate it.
So we certainly welcome the news of her arrival here at the NCUA and just wish you well in all the weeks ahead. I know it takes adjustment with a newborn in the house. I just want to say this, if I may. In life, may Zoe have an open mind, a caring heart, and a generous soul. May she also read often and learn much. Additionally, I see a credit union account in Zoe's future. After all, I learned important lessons about budgeting, saving, and compound interest from the mom and dad credit union when I was just 7 years old. I'm sure that you're going to do the same with your family. With that, let me pause and see if the Vice Chairman has any words.
Well, I would add that at Halloween, they get a bunch of candy. Reach in, grab 40%. They'll also learn about taxes. Okay. And I know it's your second child. The biggest change in someone's life is when they go from 0 to 1 child. You know, our lives are fundamentally different from that day on. Going from 1 to 2, you're going to have to play man-to-man defense, not zone. But no, I know it's a remarkable change. I just have the one little one. But I know going from 1 to 2 is a monumental change. And of course, when you were gone, you know, the only thing we cared about is that everybody came away healthy.
Absolutely.
And you're doing this one remotely. I had to do one remotely. Todd was out, missed one for health issues. You know, we can figure these things out.
Yep.
We can work together and get it done.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those observations. And thank you all for those opening remarks. The first item of business today is the cybersecurity update. Staff presenting to the board are Todd Finkler, Cybersecurity Advisor and Coordinator, Office of the Executive Director, and Dave Mateo, Office of the Examination Insurance Associate Director. Good morning to both of you. Dave, I understand, even though you've been at the agency for many, many years, this is your first time at the board table, so welcome.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Just take a deep breath, breathe out, and relax, and you're going to do great. Please begin whenever you are ready.
Good morning, Chairman Harper. Good morning, Vice Chairman Hauptman, and good morning, Board Member Otska. As I said, Todd Finkler and Dave Mateo here to talk about the cybersecurity brief. Next slide, please. So we'll be talking about.
I think we need to load the slides.
Is he getting slides?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
There we go.
Perfect. Next slide, please.
Next slide.
We should give these guys a clicker.
Actually,
easier.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Because sometimes you have to go back to one.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we're going to be talking about is I'm going to talk about hacking economics, and then we're going to cover some free resources for the credit unions to help them manage the risks that they're coming in with cyber. And then Dave gets to do the fun stuff and looking at the data from the credit union cyber incident reports, as well as the information security exam. Next slide, please. So hacking economics, I like to think of, when you look at the cybersecurity environment, what we have going on is we have a maturation of the environment. So 5 years ago, if you looked at the great great in a sense, I guess, bad hackers or cyber adversaries, what you would see is as primarily nation state actors. Now what you're seeing is that the organized crime has gotten into the business, and they're running this as a business, and so they're becoming very professional at that. So the way I look at these things, and so these are actually four trends that we're seeing across the financial sector. That are prominent. And the reasoning behind these four trends is because there's a great return on investment. So I'm going to talk about each of these relative to that return on investment. So the first one is third-party exploitation. So if I have to come up with one exploit, what a great way for me to get access to a lot of companies, because I only need to attack one vendor, and now I've got access to all the people, the customers that they service. So great return on investment there. For web applications, all I need is a laptop and an internet connection, and I could start attacking those web applications without any real restrictions. And so it's a target that's intended to be open anyway, so it just makes it easier for to do the job. And so again, return on investment there is high. The third trend that has been consistent for years now is social engineering. Forget all the expertise that I needed to actually do an attack. I just need to figure out how to attack people, right? And so I just need to trick them into giving me the information so I can get into the networks. And then the fourth trend that we're seeing is a tremendous amount of ransomware. And the idea here is there's two things I can do with data that I steal. I could either hold it over someone's head and get an immediate payment back on it, or I could turn around and try to sell it on the dark web, which makes it a little bit more challenging and a little bit uglier. So it's easier for them to do a ransom attack for the return on investment. Next slide, please. So extremely complex environment, and it is a hard job to do. I did once signals intelligence. I was in signals intelligence for a while, and I switched over to the defensive side, and it is definitely a hard job to do. And so what I try to think of when we do cybersecurity is to help folks try to prioritize their limited amount of resources, because and there's going to be an attack. And so the question is, and there's not an infinite amount of resources. You can't spend all your money to protecting the data. So really the question is how can you best mitigate those risks? And so what I like to find is for credit unions that are struggling with those resources, let's find resources that the government already understands there's a problem here and is providing free services that they can use today. So I'd like to cover some of those. The first one is a group of resources that are provided by the Cybersecurity and Critical Infrastructure Agency, or CISA. And they provide 4 resources I want to talk about briefly. One is a regional cybersecurity expert. You can get in touch with them and build a relationship with them. They can help you with problems that you're having, questions you have on prioritizations. If you have a cyber attack, they can help you through that and walk you through that. They can do tabletop exercises and point you to all the other references that or resources I'm talking about within CISA and even outside CISA. It's great to build a relationship now. Costs you nothing. The second one, I really like this one because it's a big deal with being exposed on the internet. It's called Cyber Hygiene, and it does an automated vulnerability scanning on your external facing IP addresses. And where that helps you with the prioritization is you can see where you're exposed because you get a weekly report based on the automated scans that you see, and you can try to prioritize those based on those vulnerabilities that you have exposed. The only thing I've seen people hesitate to do this is their fear of giving information to the government. But last year, CISA told us about 3 weeks ago, CISA said there was a law passed last year that stops them from sharing that information unless it's anonymized and aggregated. So they can't even share it within different compartments of CISA. So I think this is a great opportunity for people to leverage if they're not already doing this. The third thing they provide is known exploited vulnerabilities. So if you've heard of common vulnerabilities and exposure, CVEs, there's a way to publish vulnerabilities in software as well as hardware to let the community know where they need to fix things. Last year in 2023, there's about 29,000 of them. This year, already in August, there's over 34,000 of them. As per August. So what CISA does is not all of them are actually exploited. So CISA looks at in the environment to look at exploits, and then it finds the ones that are actually being used and puts those on a special list to give you a priority list of things to take care of. So take care of those first. They also offer automated information feeds that they do as well as Treasury does. Theirs is focused on the critical infrastructure, whereas the Treasury is focused just on the financial sector. So moving to Treasury, I already talked about their automated threat and information feed. They also have an interesting feed where that you can get, they will pay for a clearance for a member of your organization, for critical infrastructure organizations, to get cleared and be able to come to the T-Suite, which is a secure compartmented information facility. And they can see classified intelligence threats in that facility and talk with other other parties on what threats are out there to help prioritize their resources. In addition to that, U.S. Cyber Command has the something called under advisement, a cover term. And under advisement, what the focus is to help right now the largest of credit unions to get unclassified threat intelligence feeds. And they're working to get the resources to expand that program to the rest of the critical infrastructure.
And before we leave this slide, where can people find this on our website, or what websites can they go to?
That is a great question. So I have all the resources, and we're working to update our website to contain that underneath the cybersecurity references and resources page.
Great, thank you.
So this is all I have on here, and I'm going to pass it over to David to talk about the fun stuff, the data that we've been seeing. Next slide, please.
All right, thank you, Todd. Good morning, Chairman Harper, Vice Chairman Hotman, and Board Member Otska. Early in the presentation, Todd spoke about the broader cybersecurity landscape, and now I will talk about the top trends that we are seeing from the incidents credit union reported to us in the last year. So ransomware attacks and business email compromises are not unique to credit unions and are consistent across all critical infrastructure sectors. However, we're also seeing outages caused by third-party providers and attacks against the security of ATMs. In the next few slides, I hope to provide some additional detail about each of these areas. Next slide, please. Between September 1st of 2023 and August 31st of 2024, that's the first year since the cyber incident reporting rule, we received over 1,000 incident reports to our cyber incident credit union reporting system, also affectionately known as SICRs. The upper left pie on this slide represent incident reports about ransomware, business email compromise, ATM tampering and fraud, and a combination of other things such as person-to-person transfers, wire fraud, and BIN attacks on debit cards. Nearly 70% of all incident reports are related to third-party service provider. And the 742 third-party incidents, do not represent a one-to-one relationship with credit union incidents, but represent 13 specific events. And it's important to note that one service provider event can and has impacted many credit unions. Next slide, please. Ransomware attacks are quite common and are increasingly problematic because they often result in some form of loss of availability, data integrity, or confidentiality of member information. The credit union reporting trends about ransomware are the same as the overall U.S. financial sector reporting. According to the FBI's Internet Crimes Complaint Center 2023 annual report, the financial service sector is the 5th most targeted critical infrastructure sector, and ransom demands are on average between $1 and $10 million, with payment most typically demanded in Bitcoin. To prepare against ransomware, credit unions should maintain offline encrypted backups of critical data, must implement zero trust architecture, create, maintain, and regularly exercise a basic cyber incident response plan, and the associated communications plan that includes response and notification procedures, and ensure that they have a plan for resiliency of continuity of operations in the event of a ransomware attack. It is important to know that paying a ransom could violate the Office of Foreign Assets Control sanctions and lead to enforcement actions. Planning to pay a ransom is not a plan for resiliency. Next slide, please. Anyone with an email account, as Todd mentioned earlier, is vulnerable to phishing and social engineering, and these methods can often lead to credential theft and business email compromise. Business email compromises remain a viable tactic in the financial sector and make up 29% of the 330 non-vendor related credit union incident reports that I showed earlier. ATM incidents include skimming and shimming, which result in the unauthorized capture of card and PIN information. And number two, exploits of ATM hardware and software that result in jackpotting withdrawal limits. These sophisticated forms of financial fraud represent 36% of the 330 credit union incident reports that I mentioned earlier, excluding the third-party cyber incidents. But additionally, I want to mention that we have seen a rise in the takeover of member service toll-free numbers. And credit unions should add measures to their accounts to prevent telecommunication companies from being duped by fraudsters. Lastly, bad actors exploit vulnerabilities, especially unpatched ones. So credit unions should move quickly once issues are identified and remediate critical vulnerabilities after any patches are issued. Next slide, please. Information sharing is critical to protecting the credit union system and the Share Insurance Fund, and information received may allow us to proactively alert credit unions. We have noticed that credit unions might not be reporting all incidents that require notification. NCUA sometimes finds out about incidents through news reports or social media, at which time we may reach out to the credit union and request incident information. For example, during a July IT audit that disrupted vital member services across the globe, NCUA received only 16 reports from credit unions. Also, credit unions should provide incident updates as information becomes known throughout the entire lifespan of the incident. The NCUA may also reach out to credit unions or named incident contacts whenever we require additional information. We also encourage credit unions to form relationships with their FBI field office before an incident occurs. And also, any legal representation agreements should not preclude or prohibit anyone from working with law enforcement. Next slide, please. Last September marked the 1 year since the implementation of the NCUA Cyber Incident Reporting Rule. As a reminder, this slide outlines the definition of a reportable incident that must be reported to NCUA. I want to provide some examples of reportable incidents. So for example, if a federal insured credit union becomes aware that sensitive data is unlawfully accessed, modified, or destroyed, or if the integrity of a network or member information system is compromised, right? There are many technical reasons why a service may not be available at any given time. For example, when a computer server is offline for maintenance or system is being updated. Such events are routine and thus would not be reportable to the NCUA. A distributed denial of service attack that disrupts member account access and leads to substantial system outage is something that is reportable. However, events such as blocked phishing attempts, failed attempts to gain access to a system, or unsuccessful malware attacks would not be reportable. The credit union should report when a third-party service provider informs the credit union that the credit union's sensitive data or business operations have been compromised or disrupted as a result of a cyber incident experienced by that third-party service provider, or upon the credit union forming a reasonable belief that that has occurred. If you are not sure about whether to report or not, we ask you to please report. Next slide, please. Soon, we will be rolling out a new web-based cyber incident reporting form that will help simplify reporting. We will provide updated instructions and a quick reference guide, and the web form will complement the other existing reporting methods, voicemail and email. NCUA and the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, met in August to discuss the notice of proposed rulemaking comments that were received either from credit unions or about credit unions in regards to the Cyber Incident Reporting for Critical Infrastructure Act, commonly known as CIRCIA. NCUA remains committed to working with CISA to find the best and least burdensome way for credit union incident report information to make it to CISA. The new web form I mentioned will help us capture the information that CISA is interested in. And we will continue to collaborate with other federal agencies to ensure awareness of best practices across the financial sector, share information, and minimize the burden to credit unions. Next slide. Since the implementation in early 2023, examiners have completed nearly 2,400 information security examination assessments, also known as ICE. From those nearly 2,400 assessments, we have found that smaller institutions, and those are 50 million or less, are doing well in terms of critical cybersecurity controls, such as implementing antivirus and anti-malware protections, patching critical systems and applications, and access controls. Additionally, more than 93% of them maintain backup and recovery plans for critical systems and services. For credit unions greater than 50 million in assets, they're doing well in maintaining board-approved policies and procedures and implementing network security controls, such as firewalls and intrusion prevention systems, as well as cybersecurity controls, such as antivirus and anti-malware. Next slide. When we look at the exams, the three areas with the most opportunities for improvement are information security risk assessments, business continuity programs, and incident response programs.
I think we need to catch up
No,
on the slide.
we're actually, we're caught up.
Oh, good, thanks. Sorry about that.
No worries. The next group of opportunities for improvement include awareness training, security program policies, governance, and third-party risk management. We encourage credit unions of all sizes to focus on increasing their maturity in these areas. And lastly, since credit unions rely heavily on third parties for a variety of services and products, they are more vulnerable to cybersecurity threats. Risks can be mitigated with more comprehensive information about these third-party service providers. Next slide. I want to bring your attention to the NCUA Letter to Credit Unions 24-CU-02 that was published on Monday, October 21st of 2024, about the need for boards of directors to remain focused on managing cyber risks and ensuring the credit union has the necessary resources to maintain an effective cybersecurity program that aligns with its products, its services, and its risk profile. Boards should engage in ongoing education about current cybersecurity threats, trends, and best practices. And the board members do not need to be technical experts. They must know enough cybersecurity to provide effective oversight and direction for their executive teams and subject matter experts. Credit union boards of directors must approve and regularly review a comprehensive information security program that meets the requirements of Part 748 of the NCUA regulations, which include risk assessments, security controls, and incident plans. The credit union board should set clear expectations for management about the due diligence of third-party vendors with respect to information security, ensure that cybersecurity is a core value within the credit union and influencing decision-making at all levels, and provide periodic information security education for their members to promote sound cybersecurity practices such as the use of multi-factor authentication and the importance of strong, frequently changed passwords. The board of directors must ensure that resilience plans allow the credit union to operate effectively during and after a cyber attack. This plan may involve identified alternative processes or systems that can be utilized during an outage. Next slide. The Federal Financial Institutions Examination Council at the FFIEC recently announced the sunsetting of its cybersecurity assessment tool, the CAT, on August 31st, 2025. While that decision impacts the broader financial services industry, NCUA's automated cybersecurity examination tool, commonly known as ACET, will continue to be supported and will remain available for use by credit unions. The NCUA will ensure the ACET remains relevant and current with the evolving cybersecurity landscape. We are planning updates to the ACET content to align with new standards and frameworks, such as the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 and the CISA Cybersecurity Performance Goals. These updates will ensure that the ACET continues to meet credit union needs in assessing their cybersecurity stance. We are very encouraged by seeing that the ACET has been downloaded nearly 8,000 times in the last year. Next slide. As a reminder, there are several resources available on NCUA's website, and we have a dedicated cybersecurity resources page that includes guidance, tools, and links to federal programs. That concludes our remarks, and we'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you, Todd and Dave, for that informative briefing. I know that for a number of years, we've been having these at least once annually. This briefing by far is the most informative briefing that we've had on this topic. And if I could just make, I know that we do webinars, I know that we do outreach, but if I could make a plea, if credit union leagues, trade associations would like for us to come and speak to their members, we'd be happy to do that, as well as if for media outlets in the credit union space to have more in-depth. I think that everybody would benefit from this information. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and during this annual observance, the National Credit Union Administration seeks to shine a light on the many cybersecurity issues currently confronting credit union members, the credit union system, the agency, and the financial services sector more broadly. But the reality is that we must remain laser focused on these issues year-round. That's because foreign and domestic cyber fraudsters, as you point out, including some of our international adversaries, continue to target financial services providers and their vendors. The credit union system is a critical part of the financial services sector, and these annual cybersecurity updates at the NCUA board table are an important reminder that cyber attacks on the financial services industry, including within the credit union system, will remain high for the foreseeable future. In fact, I am reminded of the phrase of the famous and notorious bank robber, Willie Sutton, who said, when asked, why do people steal from banks and why did he steal from banks? He said, that's where the money is. Well, we are seeing that this is the fifth largest sector that is targeted by cyber fraudsters, and we need to make sure that everyone remains on their toes. Far too often, we see that third-party service providers are a weak link in the financial system, a danger noted in the annual report of Financial Stability Oversight Council, and credit union third-party service providers are no exception. In fact, if we could pull up slide 6, we see that from September 1st, 2023, when the NCUA's cybersecurity incident rule notification became effective, through August 31st of this year, credit unions reported nearly 1,100 cybersecurity incidents. In fact, 7 out of 10 of these reports related to the use or involvement of third-party service providers. Moreover, approximately 90% of the industry's assets are managed by third-party service providers or touched with no NCUA oversight. Last November, a single third-party service provider's cybersecurity incident disrupted the daily operations of 60 credit unions. And in June, a credit union with almost $10 billion in assets reported the personal information of more than 1 million current and former members and employees had been accessed during a ransomware attack. The breach initially occurred on May 23rd, but Todd, as you pointed out, sometimes these cyber fraudsters lie in wait. The ransomware attackers actually did not shut down the credit union's online and mobile banking systems until a month later on June 29th. What's more, ransomware attacks attributed to malvertising, a relatively new cyber attack technique that injects malicious digital code within digital ads, are on the rise. For this type of attack to work, the user doesn't even have to physically click on a link for the system to become infected. Instead, a simple internet search can result in malvertising that appears on the page and exploits the vulnerabilities of the internet browser. Credit union cybersecurity teams should focus, therefore, on standardizing and securing web browsers and deploying ad blocking software to protect against this very real-world threat. These incidents highlight significant vulnerabilities in the $2.3 trillion federally insured credit union industry and our nation's interconnected critical financial infrastructure. We cannot afford to leave these vulnerabilities unchecked. As such, it's everyone's responsibility to maintain good cyber hygiene at home and at work. Keeping software updated, using strong words and passkeys, reporting phishing attempts, and enforcing the use of multi-factor authentication are just a few examples of the measures anyone can adopt to strengthen their collective defenses. Education and training are also critical to raising and maintaining awareness of cyber threats. Earlier this week, as you noted, Dave, the NCUA issued a letter to credit unions that provides boards of directors with clear guidance on their roles and responsibilities for bolstering the credit union system's cyber defenses. Those responsibilities include providing recurring training, approving the credit union's information security program, overseeing operational matters related to the credit union, including third-party service organizations and other technology systems, and ensuring appropriate incident response and resiliency plans are in place. Dave, of these several recommendations, and I know the letter ran several pages in length in it, if you could emphasize just one piece of advice or action that a credit union board should take, what would it be?
I appreciate the question. I want to ensure that every credit union has a robust incident response and resiliency plan that includes scenarios for responding to, operating and working during, and recovering from a ransomware attack.
I think that is a great piece of advice. Cyber threats and technology are rapidly advancing, and all of us must keep pace in having that robust plan of attack when the attack happens is certainly a smart idea. It's better to have a plan in place beforehand than trying to figure it out afterwards. It's also why we require periodic cybersecurity training here and planning here at the agency, and why we conduct exercises to test that knowledge. I also want to ask another question, and we didn't discuss this in advance, but I think you can help me out here. I am under no illusion that we see as many eyes on the NCUA board meeting broadcast as we see on C-SPAN, and certainly on the nightly news. But our exam teams are going into credit unions on a regular basis. What are we doing to educate our examiners so that they can educate credit unions and provide the information needed to credit unions? There are front lines in this whole situation.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the question. There's ongoing education. There's also the application of lessons learned gathered from the exams to be used to inform other exams and our examination procedures. So the more information that we have, the better insight we get, and the more that we can do to provide so that our examiners look for the more important things, for the riskiest things, as well as for the credit unions to protect themselves and make everybody's jobs easier.
And how are we ensuring that that communication between what we are teaching our examiners is actually happening to getting to credit union leaders?
So we're regularly collecting feedback from our examiners and turning that into advice, into guidelines, into procedures, into communications to the credit unions, and as well as a regional field staff to do these things. So it's ongoing communication. It is regular sharing of information. Information sharing is the key to what we're doing, and just learning, listening, and observing. It's as Todd mentioned earlier. It's when it comes to cybersecurity, it's not about if it's going to happen. It's unfortunately when it's going to happen.
Yeah, and Dave, would it be fair to say I've heard of a number of credit unions that have seen their management component rating downgraded because of information security issues. Is that what you're seeing in the office overall as you collect that and aggregate that data?
It certainly happens, and then, it informs the types of questions and things that we assess in our exams.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think that that's really helpful information to get out there. Despite our efforts to strengthen the system's cyber defenses, we of course still have a blind spot. For example, NCUA's ability to analyze and assess the risk in the entire credit union system remains limited because the agency lacks the same level of oversight of third-party service providers as federal banking regulators have. Stakeholders must understand the risks resulting from the NCUA's lack of vendor authority are real, expanding, and affect all of us. As the NCUA is not just the regulator for federal credit unions, but also the insurer, the NCUA board may need to consider changes to the normal operating level of the Share Insurance Fund, given the additional risk of insuring an industry that more and more outsources core business operations to unregulated third-party service providers. And as both of you discussed, most cyber incidents reported to the NCUA, in fact, involve third-party service providers. Until this growing regulatory blind spot is closed, thousands of federally insured credit unions with more than 140 million consumers who use those credit unions and trillions of dollars in assets are exposed to higher levels of risk. Credit union leaders must also understand that their institutions are a significant part of our nation's critical infrastructure, something that the U.S. government has a solemn obligation to protect. We cannot do that without the ability to assess and analyze risk, and that is what vendor supervision would provide us the ability to do. It's heartening to hear, as I speak with more and more credit union leaders, that they understand the value of the NCUA having the same vendor supervisory authority as the federal banking agencies. They understand that their industry is worthy of the same protections as the banking industry, and they understand that if the NCUA had vendor authority, we could provide summary reports of those third-party exams to credit unions for use in due diligence. This statutory change, in other words, would eliminate a competitive disadvantage that credit unions currently have when compared to banks. During my travels and meetings with credit union leagues and officials, more CEOs and leaders have also told my team and me that they see the value and benefits of restoring the NCUA's third-party service authority because they cannot manage all potential risks and liabilities associated with those providers. I very much agree. Restoring the NCUA's ability to oversee these entities would bolster our national economic security, improve safety and soundness, and enhance consumer financial protection and anti-money laundering compliance. It would also save credit unions time and money in the long term, so it's common sense and just good business. Plus, it would give credit union members the same protection that bank consumers have. That concludes my remarks. I now recognize the Vice Chairman for his.
Thank you, sir, and thanks Todd and David for the update. David, is your first time?
Yes, sir.
All right, well done. Thank you for all the work you put into that. As the chairman mentioned, it's the fifth most targeted sector of the nation. They have money. Financial institutions they have cash. They know how to send it. So we can understand why they're targeted. And every single one of us is vulnerable. I want to compliment you on your choice of career. Cybersecurity is a growth industry, unfortunately. Do you know anybody who's good at cyber that's unemployed? Me neither. I remember at our July board meeting, it was July 18th, and we finished up the following morning, packed up the family and the car and dog, arduous 15-hour family trip up to Maine, right? It's not fun with a kid in a car seat, dog on a long trip. But I remember that Friday, actually, because we debated flying. I was really glad we drove. Do you happen to remember why?
Was that when the systems was a Southwest system?
Because at 8 o'clock in the morning, there was a ground strike. It was the crowd strike. Delta, United, American, Allegiant halted all travel. Absolute nightmare. Now let me ask you, was that considered to be a cyber incident? It's not really, right? That was a code update that hit Microsoft Windows from CrowdStrike, right? From a cyber standpoint. My next question is, did we get calls from people who thought things were down? But I don't believe it's a cyber incident, but you're the experts here.
So I believe based on our rule, that is a cyber incident because it
Okay.
affected the operational the operations of the credit union.
What if the local cable provider had a problem and the internet was down? Is that a cyber incident? Either way, you can't do anything.
It's also a cyber incident.
That's a cyber
I believe,
incident too?
based on the
Okay.
rules, yes.
Because I remember during that whole mess, right, and it took some of these airlines until the next week to get these people going. Especially with Delta, people slept in the Atlanta airport for days, you know. You couldn't get a hotel. Imagine you were connecting through, right, because all the hotels were sold out within 100 miles. Absolute nightmare. But they were making sure that this is not a cyber attack. No one's being held for ransom or anything like that. There was a lot of talk about that, you know, the DHS involved that this thing is terrible, but they made a whole point of saying they, by their standards, didn't consider it a cyber attack. Right, and, but we did get calls?
I can answer that. First to add that the aspect that would have made it relevant to us is the disruption to vital member services, right? It's inevitable that many member services were impacted,
And- yes.
even before it's fully known that it was but a poor configuration management practice.
One person uploading an untested line of code and a patch and boom.
And in regards to
Went down.
that specific event, we
Okay.
received 16 reports.
We got 16 for that, okay. Now, so just to be clear, if your local internet provider had a problem, right? You know, storm, wires get cut, or there's just a power outage. So obviously you're not gonna have internet, there's no power, right? And the average credit union doesn't have its own generator in those kind of office buildings. Is that also something that they're supposed to report per our rule?
If it affects vital member services, yes.
Okay. All right. One thing I want to mention is the role of, because these things are important, the CrowdStrike, you couldn't not notice that it was very regulated industries, and there was a connection. Airlines, hospitals, financial services, very regulated, in the United States, very regulated industries. And government played a role in making this worse in a way, because as I understand it, and I don't want to get out over my skis, because I don't know much about CrowdStrike in that industry, but CrowdStrike was seen as, when you were in an exam, it was a quick way to be able to move on to the next topic. Oh, you're using CrowdStrike? Okay, good. So people knew that that was what regulators liked. So, and I'm not here to say there was better options, but it's a longer meeting if you use somebody else, if you're using, and that was kind of the good housekeeping seal of approval. Oh, you have this CrowdStrike system? All right, next topic, boom, which is what you want if you're a regulated industry, next topic. So you wound up having, you know, maybe it would have been only one airline, you know, I'm speculating here, but no, we're using this new thing. It's cheaper, it's better, whatever. That now, it makes your meeting longer. You're putting the examiner in a tougher spot. My point is, sometimes government, if we lean and feel we have our preferred answers, you know, and we act kind of like there's a white list, that if you answer A, your exam is easier and quicker, or if you answer B, it's longer with a lot more work and you've made your examiner a little uncomfortable, because people don't like signing off on things they don't really know, okay? But A might not be better than B, right? Might not be more effective for your organization, more cost-effective. Anyway, I just wanted to note that, and it was pointed out to me, well, it was pointed out to me online, I read it, that where you don't have that sort of regulation where they can shut you down entirely, that level of regulation, and you get graded and that sort of thing. Very regulated industries. The government played a role in that, put it that way. Also, you mentioned, usually ask for Bitcoin. I just want to defend Bitcoin for a second. The reason you do it is because it's useful. Because there's no other way that any two human beings on Earth can send each other money 24 hours a day with instant settlement. There's no fake deposits. You don't have to worry about if money's counterfeit. Any two humans on Earth. Now, in this country, things work kind of well. Well, the payment system's a little creaky, but it's an absolute lifeline if your government is destroying your currency via inflation. In Argentina, you know, where they have siesta, where they have different prices in the afternoon and in the morning. For a lot of people, it's an absolute godsend. So it's, Bitcoin itself is just incredibly useful, but not that great for cyber. They really have to hustle on their end, the bad guys, because what do we know about Bitcoin? Has an unalterable public database. That transaction sent from this wallet to that wallet can never, ever be erased. Bitcoin, as you know, has their redundancies built in because there's separate copies everywhere. There's no central database. It's a totally decentralized system. their redundancies are the envy of any organization in the world because it's almost impossible to change that database. It's an unalterable transaction. So there's more of a record of it. This is why there's companies like Chainalysis, FinCEN use them, tracking these things. So they have to hustle on their end to disappear and clean that wallet out and never use it again and never send any money to anybody else from that. It's difficult to do. It's a paper trail. So Bitcoin has an unalterable, unchangeable public database that can never be changed. And yes, it is useful and criminals use it. But what I would say is that if you think crypto is often used by criminals, you're going to freak out when you hear about cash. So, as we said, as Chairman mentioned, financial institutions have two things: data that's useful, and they have cash. They're also savvier than some at making payments. And while I don't think we need any new regs specifically for artificial intelligence, like most technology, the stuff that bad guys do is already illegal. Technology just made new ways to do it. They're far, right? When I know that groups look at LinkedIn and see recent updates for jobs like CFO, controller, anyone who has the power to send an enormous amount of money. And if the person came from outside the employer, okay, brand new CFA job, you're new, you don't want to rock the boat, they are more likely to fall for an email that looks like it's from the boss, says, hey, we got to send 400 million to this account. They might not realize how it is. They don't want to push back on the new job they got. So, and it used to be you could call, if the boss called you and you heard their voice, I know Todd's voice, I know if it's him. Well, that's a whole nother thing now. It could be his voice. Hell, he could even be on a screen. So I don't think we need people asking, you have regs on this. The stuff is already illegal or bad. There's just new ways to do it. Hearing someone's voice used to be more sure than we are now. Credit unions are, one thing about them is they're quite cooperative with each other as well. They build interconnected systems, make it possible to compete with larger institutions, right? They're like that story about the school of fish that looked like the big one, whatever that story's called. But we remember interconnected is good in a lot of ways, but it's also negative, right? It provides points of leverage. So Monday, October 21, we released a letter. We mentioned it before, just to go over the 4 items in it. The agency is not asking any credit union board to be technical experts. I don't think our board considers ourselves to be technical experts, but they must be aware of the risks. And these credit unions should approve their IT information security program annually. That's not new. They should review the program annually, make sure it's evolving threat. For example, like we just said, AI makes a lot of other solutions harder. And oversee operational management. No one's asking anybody to be a technical expert, but there's things that they're responsible for overseeing. Third-party due diligence. Credit unions are responsible for who they do business with. They may have a relationship that where they get upset with their vendor that they didn't do as well. People were certainly upset with CrowdStrike. But that's still a from our perspective, it's solely the responsibility of the credit union executive, not. Because can they manage their relationships or not? And if they can't, that speaks poorly of management. And they also don't want us to start coming in and having a good list of vendors and bad list of vendors, right? That's not going to help anybody. 7 in 10 cyber incidents this year with credit unions involve a third party. So we want to make sure the requirements you have in your contracts protect third-party data. Oh, and just to finish that letter we just sent, the 4th one was incident response planning and resilience. You want to make this easy, okay? I want to tell people, because we know for a fact that people probably should have. We know that there's been people, credit unions affected, it didn't call us. We know because of the numbers. We know, be 100 credit unions affected, we got 20 calls. Well, we know 80 didn't. I want you to know, things that are easy to do get done. The simpler you make it, the more effective it is, the higher response rate we get, right? And we want to do our part, make it simple. And I think this reporting, this reminds me of our discussion about signing up for the CLF. It's one of those things where if you do it, it's one of those things you might put off, and then you do it, and you're like, wait a second, that wasn't that hard. Why did I put that off? A 2-minute rule, if you can do it in under 2 minutes, do it right now. I want people to know, credit unions, that this is actually very easy to do. It's not some long government form you may be imagining your first time. Can I have a slide, please? I just Googled NCUA cyber reporting. You could put NCUA cyber. I did this in a couple of different browsers. I did it on my phone. You literally don't even have to click past that. Why? Because even on that preview part, see the number right there? Stop right there, right? If somebody's Saturday, their kid's soccer game, and someone says, boss, you know, we have an outage. And she's like, okay, I guess we have to report that or form. You have your phone on you. Google, boom, you are finished. All you have to do is the number. You don't even have to click on a link. See that number right there? 1-833. I'm asking every credit union CEO, whoever made the reporting, just take that number and I would put it in your contacts. If you're like us and you have two phones, you have a personal, put it in there. That's going to help you on Saturday when you're watching your daughter's soccer game. Just put that number in. I would save it like Cyber NCUA or something. If you want to be good, I would also put in the contact itself your charter number to have it handy. You know, like I have United Airlines customer service in here. I also have my Mileage Plus number right there in the contact, so I have it in front of me. All you need to do, if you ever, as long as you have access to a phone or internet, you can get this done right then and there on the spot, okay? I would take that number, save it to your phone, whatever phones you're going to use, okay? And if you do click it, next slide, please. All right, this is it. This is the form, okay? Quick reference guide. We acknowledge this thing as a wild card, knowing that in the scenarios we're talking about, depending on what kind of situation you have, you may not have work email. You might not be able to go find that email. What do we do? You might not have access to much. So if I was the person in charge, either the CEO or the CIO, I would not only have this physically taped to my desk or wherever, I would have that little card, because you have your charter number in there, and that's like kind of a wallet card. Remember, we have to think about a scenario where there's no internet, no email, your system's down, that you can get this done and it's easy. I know when you have notifying NCUA is not your first priority, nor should it be. But this is an easy one to get off your to-do list. I would have that. Well, I would also take a picture of that and have it in a folder on your phone, you know, in your photos. Have it, and it's very, very simple to do. Okay, so I would save it in your contacts. A lot easier. Even if you didn't have the charter number, whoever decided to call that number, we could probably live with it. You know, we're Apple First Credit Union in Wisconsin, right? And especially from our perspective, am I correct? You want to know if there's a problem at a credit union, but what we I think really care about is all of a sudden this morning everything's fine, but by noon today we got 25 calls. Something's going on, right? A broader issue. There's always going to be some credit union out there where the local internet provider's down or what have you, right? A tree falls on a branch and you lose. That happened to me at my house. Tree hit the branch and I lost cable and internet for a while. That's good. We care about, is there something happening? Is there a broad issue where we at NCUA can help and say, hey, whatever you do, don't download that patch. It's going to make everything worse. So do that. And then that number is 24 hours, right? Even if you didn't have that wild card, sorry, you're going to know your own name. I don't love the reporter name and title. That refers to the credit union person who's calling it in. I don't know. Like people think a reporter is a journalist, or maybe it's some expression. Anyway, reporter name and title. Like, I don't know. I'm not a reporter. I'm just the IT guy for the credit union, right? But even if you didn't have that card and you just Googled it, remember, you're sitting there, you have your personal phone, you didn't save the contact, you're watching the kid's soccer game on Saturday, you get a call. You can get it done in 10 seconds, even if you had no information. NCUA, cyber, boom. You're going to get that number, okay? Let's try it.
Thank you for calling the NCUA Cyber Incident Reporting Hotline. Please enter your credit union charter number. If you don't know it, press #3.
Okay, I press 3.
Please leave your name, title, callback number, credit union name, charter number, the date and time the incident was identified, and basic description of the incident. The description should include what functions were or are reasonably believed to have been affected, or if sensitive information was compromised. Please hang up once your voicemail is complete. If the NCUA requires additional information, we will contact you shortly. Thank you.
All right. Should I leave a message? I downloaded the Todd Harper virus. What happened? What do I do? Anyway, that's pretty good. The only, remember, the simpler you make it, the more likely you get it, right? And your response rate's going to be quicker. It's going to be higher. I don't know if every person who calls in 24 hours a day, waking up in the middle of the night at the kids' soccer game would I don't know how well-known charter numbers are in terms of knowing it. But again, we could live with it if they didn't have that, right? Because remember, it says either enter your charter number, and if you don't know it, press 3, which then asks for your charter number, which you only hit 3 because you didn't know it, right? So, but I still think we could live with it. Just get the call in. It's easy. Nobody's going to ding you because you didn't remember every digit of your charter number. You're the new CTO. You just got hired last week. I walk up to them right now and ask them what their employer's charter number is, right? A lot of people won't know. But my point is, I don't want people to get hung up. Pick up the phone, call that number. It's very easy. Leave it. You have done. And like it says, we'll get back to you if we need more. But this is not a step. The incident reporting, a lot of people aren't doing it. They can choose not to do it if they want to, but I just want people to know that there's very little roadblock. It's very simple to do. This is not some complicated bureaucratic form where you're going to have to look up a bunch of stuff up. You can do it in your shorts and your dad shoes on the side of the soccer game, you know. Easy to do. Anyway, I will stop there. I just want to ask, the incident reporting, the presentation you showed us, the incident reporting form, where is that going to live? Just a good time to remind people.
Sure. The form will live on the ncua.gov, the public website, on the Cybersecurity Resources webpage, and it will go live in December.
In December.
And we will be updating the quick reference guide, the contact card that you mentioned earlier, as well as providing instructions on how to use it.
Sounds like not a bad thing to also actively push out. People obviously don't check our website, and they wouldn't know that there was something new to check in the first place, right? If we could push it out, see attachment, print this out, tape it to your, desk. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you so much. One of the things I like about everybody putting it into their contact list is it helps protect against malvertising when they do the search overall. I'd like to actually take your suggestion one step further. Perhaps we could update our examination guidelines, that we push out that 2-pager to everybody at every exam and just make it a normal course of business.
Physically hand it to them.
Physically hand it to them. I think that would be a great way to do it. Board Member Otska, you're now recognized.
Thank you, Chair Harper. And thank you, Dave and Todd, for the briefing and for your work to keep the NCUA and the credit union system safe from cyber attacks. As you mentioned during the briefing, cyber attacks come in all forms: ransomware, attacks to ATMs, emails, and it can affect credit unions of all sizes. A credit union having to pay millions of dollars to a hacker to retrieve its own customers' data hurts credit union members, reduces trust in the greater system, and potentially negatively affects the Share Insurance Fund. So I'm happy to support the work that you and your team are doing to implement the new cyber incident reporting web form and continue to build out the information security exam program. Just want to clarify one thing. Credit unions, I think it's great that we demonstrated how easy it is to report. Can you remind us all how long credit unions have to report, what the time frame is, especially seeing as how it's so easy to do, and whether it's required to do so?
I'll take that question. Thank you for the question. The credit union should report within 72 hours from when they reasonably believe that there's been a cyber incident.
Okay, great. And what we're looking for, right, is for incidents at the credit union. Are we also looking for incidents at third parties, anything affecting the credit union's operations?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. And, I'd also be remiss if I didn't highlight, something that Chair Harper, I think, raised, that the NCUA needs third-party vendor authority to fully safeguard our system of cooperative credit from cyber threats. I think that chart that you all presented of the percentage of incidents involving third parties is really it demonstrates that that's really where a lot of the issues are. And I've talked to a lot of credit unions who have had difficulties when they have those incidents with their third-party service providers. We lack the critical oversight of third-party vendors that our banking agency counterparts have. And I know credit unions kind of have to turn to a lot of third-party service providers in a lot of ways to do back office operations, to protect data. But these third parties can also be exploited as backdoors into credit unions' processing systems. And so we've seen how agencies' lack of authority and limited insight into a critical component of the credit union ecosystem has impacted our ability, the NCUA's ability to help credit unions respond to cyber threats and cyber attacks in real time. And I think, I also understand it hinders us in some ways from working with other agencies to minimize vulnerabilities in the broader financial system. So I just want to say, I do think it's imperative that we continue to work with Congress to restore this much needed authority to the NCUA. And before I conclude, just kind of circling back to cyber incident reporting more generally, I do think this is really great. And I think the work that you and your team are doing to build a more robust program is really, really great. Important to save them. Remember, I think the NCUA, as a government agency, I think credit unions, of course, have a responsibility to manage their operations, to manage their credit unions themselves. But we have a responsibility to make sure that they are doing so in a safe and sound way that protects the members. Because credit union members who are working, who are taking care of their families, they don't have time or the expertise to double check whether their credit union is monitoring their third party, systems, or, paying attention to the latest cyber threats that might be happening. Credit union members, they don't have time for that. That is what our job is as the NCUA. We are there to protect members and members' hard-earned money. And so I just want to say thank you to you and your team for all the work, and look forward to more to come. So thanks, appreciate it. Thank you, Chair Harper.
And thank you so much for those observations, Board Member Otska. Thank you also, Todd and David, for being here on this important briefing. That concludes our first item of business. Should I see a finger? Did you want to? The final item today is the new charter and field of membership update that was requested by Vice Chairman Hauptman. Staff presenting this board briefing include Martha Ninitchuk, Director, Office of Credit Union Resources and Expansion, and Leilani Stamper, Consumer Access Division Director, Office of Credit Union Resources and Expansion. Good morning, Martha. Good morning, Leilani. Always good to see both of you. Please begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Harper, Vice Chairman Hauptman, and Board Member Otska. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today about our continued efforts to improve processes and support the development of new federal credit unions and the expansion of established federal credit unions. Slide 2, please. Today's briefing focuses on new charter application data for 2024, process improvements in chartering, the provisional charter pilot, and field of membership updates. Slide 3. Accurate analysis of new charter applications ensures their compliance with the Federal Credit Union Act, Section 1753, and the regulations governing new charters. 12 CFR Part 701, Organization and Operation of Federal Credit Unions, and 12 CFR Part 701, Appendix B, Charting and Field of Membership Manual. Slide 4. I should note, for those organizing groups seeking a state charter, the charter approval process is through its state supervisory authority. If an applicant also seeks to have the state chartered credit union federally insured, they'll need to submit an insurance application to the NCUA. The NCUA will review the application, including the business and marketing plan for insurability, and will conduct a background and review of credit officials and senior staff if the SSA does not provide this information. Federal share insurance approval will be contingent upon the applicant obtaining SSA approval of its state charter. Additional information for insuring new state charters is found on our NCUA website under Support Services, Credit Union Resources and Expansion, and New Charters. Slide 5. Slide 5 reflects the number of credit unions chartered since 2018. During 2024, the NCUA chartered 3 credit unions with the hope to have 4 chartered by the end of the year. 2 of the 4 are participants in the provisional charter pilot, You'll hear more about the pilot later in this presentation. In 2024, one state chartered credit union was approved, but it is not included in the federal charter numbers as shown on slide 5. Slide 6, please. Slide 6 reflects the average number of days to review a complete application to to approve charter. The average review and approval time in 2023 was 152 days compared to 215 days so far in 2024. Over the last 12 months, CURE has seen an increase in the number of unique new charter applications with concepts that take additional time for review. For those applications that are more complex, CURE works with subject matter experts within the agency as well as the Office of General Counsel. 2024 was also the year the provisional pilot was launched, requiring additional time by staff working with organizing groups in the pilot program. Staff work with organizing groups with the intent of approving the charter. Not only are they focused on getting the organizing group to a yes, but also on providing good customer service. Slide 7, please. Over the last 5 years, field of memberships for newly chartered credit unions include 9 community, 2 multiple common bond, 7 single multiple common bonds. So far in 2024, there are a total of 3 new charters, one single associational, and 2 community charters. Slide 8. The data shown on slide 8 represents those actions taken in 2024. In other words, application actions this year may have been from applications received prior to 2024. But to date, in 2024, 14 new charter applications have been reviewed. 3 out of the 14 applications were approved. 1 was denied, 6 were deferred, and 1 application was withdrawn. Currently, CURE has 3 applications under review. New charter process improvements implemented last year have been helpful in providing more transparent instruction to organizing groups as they move through the 3 phases of chartering. Newly developed management tools are used by CURE to assess the status of new charter requests and are used when CURE meets with board offices and the Office of Executive Director to provide monthly progress updates. At this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Leilani Stamper, CURE's Consumer Access Division Director, to provide an update on the provisional charter pilot.
Thank you, Martha, and good morning.
Morning.
Chairman Harper, Vice Chairman Hotman, and Board Member Otska. I would like to take a few minutes to update you on the NCUA Provisional Charter Program and the implementation of the Provisional Charter Pilot. Last year, the Provisional Charter concept was established to address organizing groups' challenges to secure startup capital due to it not being a legal entity. A provisional charter is a stage in the post-chartering process where credit union organizing groups become a legal entity but have limited authority until securing capital levels estimated in their business plan. The credit union will be given approximately 12 months to secure additional capital and meet other requirements as stated in the letter of understanding and agreement. Next slide, please. CURE successfully developed and implemented a pilot program for the provisional charter concept during the 3rd quarter of 2023. The selection process for the candidates to participate in the pilot program involved a thorough analysis of 63 organizing groups that had completed their Phase 1. Selection criteria included a pre-approved field of membership, 1 organizing group per region, the field of membership size, their funding strategies, and upon analysis, whether the proposed credit union had a strong potential for growth and success. Ultimately, CURE chose 4 qualified candidates for the pilot program. Next slide, please. To date, CURE has chartered 2 of the 4 selected candidates. The 2 federally chartered credit unions are Tribe Federal Credit Union and Fairbreak Federal Credit Union. Tribe Federal Credit Union is a minority deposit depository low-income designated credit union serving the city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Fairbreak Federal Credit is a minority depository low-income credit union serving Memphis, Tennessee area. Both credit unions will have 1 year to obtain the required donated capital to become fully operational. If they fail to reach their targeted capital levels within a year, each regional staff will decide to either extend the provisional period, merge, or liquidate the credit union. Among the 2 remaining applicants, one submitted their Phase 2 application in the third quarter of 2024, while the other chose to withdraw from the pilot program. We intend to review the pilot program at the end of 2024 and provide recommendations for the program's future in 2025. NCUA sees the Provisional Charter Program and our phased chartering process as proven examples of NCUA working to find solutions to charter new credit unions. That concludes my remarks at this time. Martha will provide an update on field of membership.
Thanks, Leilani. Slide 12, please. CURE continues to improve its field of membership application process for credit unions. Beginning in July of this year, CURE implemented a new process using the Capri Internet system, allowing multiple common bond credit unions to add all occupational and associational groups to their field of membership by inputting the group's information and uploading documents if applicable. By enhancing the Capri system, credit unions can now add all groups of any size for multiple common bond credit unions. A future enhancement for the Capri system will allow credit unions to upload their community and underserved area application with supporting documentation. The target date for release of this update is first quarter 2025. Slide 13. This slide shows the field of membership actions approved in 2024. As you can see, over 7,200 internet applications were approved so far in 2024, with a total of 7,707 field of membership actions. Slide 14. Slide 14 breaks down the underserved area applications. CURE continues to see an increase in the number of applications to add underserved areas. The top line of the chart, underserved area applications processed, reflects the total number of applications reviewed by CURE analysts from 2020 to 2024 year-to-date. The second line reflects the total number of applications approved. Line 3 reflects the number of application deferrals, with the last line reflecting the number of applications withdrawn. The increase in number of underserved applications from 32 applications in 2020 to 87 applications so far this year is a significant increase, especially when the complexity of the underserved application is taken into consideration. The resulting workload is significant. CURE analysts allocate a large number of hours working with credit unions on their underserved applications. For example, as of September 30th, 2024, analysts spent approximately 10,440 hours processing 87 underserved applications. When a credit union's application is deferred and resubmitted, the analyst review time could potentially double. We have heard industry concerns about the time it takes to approve these complex applications. CURE continues to manage workload by assigning applications based on complexity and number of all pending applications. CURE analysts will continue to work with the credit unions to ensure applications meet all underserved area requirements, and the NCUA will continue to support process changes that provide positive customer experiences. In conclusion, the NCUA has supported the growth of newly chartered and field of membership expansions of already established credit unions by streamlining much of the application process, in addition to providing guidance and information resources to credit unions as they move through the application process. It is hoped credit unions are better able to understand the NCUA regulatory requirements and recognize an overall improvement in transparency of the applications review process. Thank you for your time today, and we are ready to address your questions.
Thank you so much, Martha and Leilani, for your briefing on new charters and field of membership expansions. And thank you to the entire team in the Office of Credit Union Resources and Expansion, or CURE for short, for your continued work to support the growth and development of credit unions of all sizes, but especially the efforts of small credit unions, low-income credit unions, minority depository institutions, and credit unions that seek to deepen access to safe, fair, and affordable financial products and services in under-resourced communities. CURE's work in supporting the chartering of new credit unions and any credit union seeking charter changes, bylaw amendments, field of membership expansions, and low-income designations is vital to a healthy and diverse financial system. And CURE's work delivering online training and resources and providing grants and loans through the Community Development Revolving Loan Fund enables eligible credit unions to better serve their members and communities' financial needs. In short, CURE's work aims to create a financial system that works for all, a philosophy that underlies the purpose of the credit union movement. As noted earlier, the agency has approved 3 new charters thus far in 2024, in addition to providing share insurance to 1 new state charter. There are also 3 new charter applications under review. 3 or 4 new charters per year may not sound like a lot, but it represents positive momentum and aligns with historic trends. Undoubtedly, the emergence of non-depository financial institutions and fintechs, as well as the pressure to achieve economies of scale, are contributing to the low number of organizing groups seeking to charter a new credit union. And while the NCUA cannot alter this economic reality, we are making strides in the areas we can change, namely assisting prospective credit union organizing groups with gaining the required capital, as well as streamlining and reducing the length of the chartering process. The NCUA's provisional chartering program allows organizing groups to show that they have the capacity to start a credit union, which in turn could facilitate their efforts to raise needed capital. As noted earlier, the NCUA has already approved 2 provisional charters, and another is in phase 2 of the application process. Decreasing the average number of days from the receipt of a complete application to an improved charter certainly modernizes, facilitates, and streamlines the chartering process. A contributing factor to the overall reduction in the review process includes CURE's automated management system for chartering. And although the average number of days is up in 2024, the time to complete the process today is well below the levels that we saw in 2018 and 2020. So thank you for your good work and leadership in that. By facilitating the process through which credit union organizers can access the initial capital needed for capital standards, loss reserves, and operating expenses, and streamlining and automating the application process, the NCUA is making it easier and supporting promising organizing groups to form a credit union. Obtaining a credit union charter, however, is not supposed to be easy or simplistic. With a charter comes the responsibility to promote financial well-being of members in a safe, sound, and consumer-friendly manner. It also comes with certain compliance requests and needs like anti-money laundering. This delicate balance requires us to both be purposeful and careful. Within statutory, safety and soundness, and consumer protection guardrails, the NCUA is committed to working with promising organizing groups to get to yes whenever possible. Thanks to the works of the CURE team, as well as the Vice Chairman's steady focus on this priority, and I really do want to thank his steady focus, the NCUA has made meaningful strides during the past 4 years in facilitating the chartering process so that organizers can pursue their visions of people helping people. Welcoming a new credit union into the system of cooperative credit is good not only for the system, but also good for the consumer, many of whom have been unbanked or underserved for far too long. And the NCUA's mission, in part, is to protect the system of cooperative credit and its member owners through effective chartering and supervision. Before closing, I do have a few questions for you all. First, if we could pull up slide 14. I'd like to get to a better understanding about the number of underserved applications. It's risen considerably since 2020. we went from 32 to 72 to 98. I mean, that's a large jump and a large increase in workload.
It is.
What's behind those numbers?
Well, from our viewpoint, our standpoint, there has been a concerted effort by the industry to encourage credit unions to expand into underserved areas. Many times the underserved areas are banking deserts, which credit unions are uniquely structured to serve. These areas actually also provide more growth opportunities for credit unions.
So it's that our rules have changed. We have more applications coming in.
Yes.
They're bigger applications.
Yes, they are larger applications. So don't forget, multiple common bond credit unions are the only type of charter that
Correct.
we can, or that is able to add underserved areas. So we see an uptick in multiple common bond credit unions seeking to serve underserved areas where they are able to increase more than 2.5 million in population, which is more than what a community charter is able to add without going through the public hearing process.
Right. For those credit unions with approved underserved expansion applications, I understand that not all of them have opened up the requisite branches in those underserved areas within 24 months, as required by our rules. How is CURE handling those deficiencies?
Right, so thank you for that question. CURE identifies those credit unions that have not established a service facility within 2 years of adding an underserved area, and that is a requirement. CURE sends the credit union a notification inquiring if a service facility has been added to the credit union. If they have added a service facility, we update our database with the information. If not, we ask the credit union if they plan to open a service facility and then provide us a service status report to review if the credit union has been providing financial services as stated within their original business plan received during the field of membership expansion application. Ultimately, if a service facility is not opened and the credit union does not plan to open one, the underserved areas are removed from the credit union's charter.
I think that's an important point. I think of the movie Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. If you have a plan to serve an underserved area, you need to build it so that they will come and get access to those financial services. Martha, my next set of questions focuses on process. If we could pull up slide 5. That slide shows that in 2024, we chartered 1 federal credit union and issued 2 provisional charters for a total of 3 new credit unions. What more can be done to shorten the application to charter process? And also, what's the most significant obstacle to obtaining a charter?
I'm going to punt that to Leilani.
Okay, well, Leilani,
I'll
let me
take
ask
that
you
question, sure. Well, what we really believe in, we would like to continue to encourage organizing groups to really go to our website. We have some amazing resources there, one being how to start a new charter with step-by-step instructions on that process, including as that is detailed each of our phases and what that looks like for the organizer. We also have resources and templates that we share on the website. So we believe that if the organizers go to our website and get all this information, when they do finally submit the application, it will be cleaner and have all of the required, hopefully all the required information needed so that when the coordinators do review it, it's a shorter time.
Leilani, first of all, let me give you a shout out not only to the work of the team in CURE, but also I know this 3-phased process was something that originated in our management development program, and that team
That's correct.
Really did a great job of re-envisioning it. Leilani, can you just go a little bit deeper? I know that the vice chairman and I often talk about the chicken and the egg argument. You can't get a charter without the capital, and you can't get the capital without the charter. How is the provisional charter helping in that?
Well, we've got 2 charters.
Right.
And so they have hit with the 2 that we've chartered, they have been actively trying to get grants and actively trying to see if loans are possible and sub-debt. So we're in kind of this,
Research phase.
research phase to
Yeah.
see what works and what doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But we're hopeful.
Yeah.
We are hopeful that we will be able to bring a recommendation that we would like to continue the program.
Yeah. So you may not know this, but my dad started a teachers credit union in 1967. His dad started a credit union at a soap factory in 1934. And certainly we've seen greater complexity. Do these provisional charters have the policies and procedures that we would expect a credit union to have in getting started before they get the provisional charter put
They
in place?
do. And then once they are chartered, our field examiner works closely with them to ensure that the policies and procedures that they need to move their operations forward are in place.
That's great. One other question I have is you talked about the number of deferrals that we've seen on the new charters. What's the reasoning behind these deferrals?
Well, most times deferrals are come from a myriad of reasons. There's different components to the application, but mainly the business plan's not supported in full by the other components of the application, so they don't all tie together. So they have a business plan, a marketing plan that doesn't tie in. They have a pro forma statement also, that projects over 5 years. That data doesn't support the products and services that they want to offer. I mean, it is a complex process, as you said. Starting a new charter is not necessarily an easy task. But for each deferral, we write explicit directions on what the organizing group, or if a credit union has a field of membership deferral, what they need to do to comply. And then we actually hold a phone call with the credit union or the organizing group to walk them through it as they are actually looking at the documentation themselves.
I really like that high touch that you do, because I think that that's important. Is that helping when we do deferrals to
absolutely.
get people ultimately through the process?
Yes, it might take a couple tries, but
Might
yes.
take a couple, well, and I will say this, one lesson that I learned from my dad, he was treasurer of that credit union when it got started, and he also took out the first loan. Don't ask him about internal controls, certainly, but as the CEO of the credit union said at the time, we can't just make money on investments. We have to make money on loans. That's what we do, and that's why he took that out, the loan for the camper trailer that I certainly got to benefit from it as a kid. One last question. I think this is a really important one. It's not just that we get new credit unions chartered. It's also important to know, how are they performing? Are they getting past 5 years? Are they getting, I know first 5 years we spend careful attention. Are they getting past 10 years? What does the data show there?
I'll take that question.
Okay, Leilani, sure.
So the performance right now varies, so it's really hard to tell. But to date, since 2018, we've had one credit union merge, but all the rest of them are in operations. And I'm happy to say that we have the rest of the remaining credit unions have been able to provide products and services to approximately 15,000 people. They have a total assets totaling $51.9 million, shared deposits of $34.8 million, and loans of $15.4 million. So they are operating and pursuing their mission.
Yeah, and I think we have to be a little careful when we say loans, because a couple of those credit unions are indeed Islamic credit unions associated with mosques that, and it's against Islamic law to have a loan, that they have set up a fee structure that as a substitute for the interest overall. Thank you so much for those insights, Leilani. In closing, the chartering of a new credit union is often the culmination of years of high hopes and hard work by organizers. Consistent with the law, we at the NCUA need to facilitate the work That's why the NCUA is making meaningful improvements to its chartering process where possible to bring new and more federal credit unions into the system. In doing so, we are providing consumers with greater access to safe, fair, and affordable financial products and services within the cooperative model. One last point, though, I just would like to make. I thought that together, all of the work that you and your team did at the MDI symposium was it earlier this month? The weeks fly by, but earlier this week was really an important set of work, and I hope that we continue to do that because I got a lot of positive feedback from those credit unions that attended, many of which were new credit unions. In fact, one of our key presenters was a new credit union himself. With that, let me turn it over to the Vice Chairman.
Speaking of our good work at our events, I believe our DEI Summit was in Minneapolis. That is connected in some manner to the fact that we've had two recent ones, charters in Minneapolis. Why we picked it?
I'm
I
not
mean,
sure if
versus
that's
Cleveland
right.
or someplace.
I actually think it was, we were thinking to try and get out of just
In the middle of the
DC
country.
so that
Wow.
we could get more people and different people
Yeah,
to the
but
table.
it was remarkable that before, I think it's important that because a third of the credit unions in this country are state charter, we make announcements about we did a charter, but I think it's equally important to say we've granted insurance because it's still the birth of a new credit union. And often their state has kind of finished theirs and their answer is, we're all set, you just got to get insurance from NCUA. So it is still announcing the birth of a new credit union. So I think we should make, and the ways we've tried to, what gets measured, get done, what gets praised is considered good. We give shout outs to new credit unions. We praise our staff for getting going. Let me start with this though. Any of the new ones you've been around for the last, 4 years at least, may I ask, what's the largest amount at their birth of insured deposits? What I'm trying to get at is the new credit unions are almost always small, right? There's no such thing as a charter for a $5 billion credit union we've had, right? Could convert from a bank or something. Yeah, what's the largest risk we've had in any of these new ones in the last few years? Do you know, ballpark?
I don't, unless Leilani
20
has.
million would be high, probably, right?
Yes, 20 million would be high. I
Right.
would say probably, and again, I am totally
Sure.
just throwing it out there, probably the highest would be around 5 million.
Yeah, the highest, and I think, is it $500,000 with the minimum, or capital at least, the dollar.
The capital is really tied upon the risk associated.
It would be unusual to have anything below $500,000 or credit union, I'll put it this way,
Nowadays.
Yes, there's a handful out there that have 6 digits in assets that still exist, but what I'm trying to get at is the good thing about this and trying new things, and we know they're not all gonna succeed.
Right.
Even the best franchising companies, they don't all work well, even if they have the best processes. But they're usually really small risks financially for us, right? So I think, we have to weigh risk. We have, all of these credit unions we put together, added up, are a rounding error to some of the results we get. We have quarterly fluctuations at some of the larger ones that dwarf, in capital and in earnings and operating income that dwarf the total risk for all of these. So that's another benefit is that from a risk standpoint, they're usually very small. And if they're growing irresponsibly, we have mechanisms to tap the brakes, which we have done before. Here's my prepared remarks. You presented June of last year. I would encourage future boards, who obviously can do what they want, to keep this. I will take credit or blame for trying to create this a annual thing, but at least for me, this is way more interesting than some of the briefings we have, I'll tell you that. And that briefing last year was focused on new charter modernization. So I appreciate this year putting the FOM information in there where this has been a priority to me since my first board meeting. I actually mentioned it before that when I went through the settled confirmation process. To me, it's an inclusion issue. If we're making it any hard for any group of Americans to decide to have their own financial service provider, we are only paying lip service to all the words like financial inclusion and everything. And for over 90 years, forming a credit union has been the answer to financial inclusion. Hundreds of thousands of immigrants, religious groups, factory workers, and more. Americans should decide how many financial services providers we have. Every single one of the charters ever granted, it was somebody out there who wasn't totally satisfied with the existing financial services marketplace. So why would you start your own? So, 1934, the Federal Credit Union Act was signed by President Roosevelt, and it put the credit union division inside the Farm Credit Administration, okay? NCUA itself didn't exist till 1970. So there was no federal charter until 1934. By that point, there were almost 3,000 credit unions. So the first 3,000 that were created in America had no interaction with anybody in our nation's capital because they were state chartered and federal deposit insurance didn't exist. So right or wrong, that process was, I'm going to say, probably easier and quicker. So those people had an advantage for getting there early. Okay, the first 3,000 never touched anyone in Washington, chartered by the state, insured elsewhere. Things were a lot simpler in a lot of ways in 1934 than they are today. Getting into a completed charter application could take years. The complexity of financial services changed, but what hasn't changed is the importance of financial services to people of modest means and to having one that serves your community, however you want to define that. Last year, we had the chart. I'm holding up what you put last year. And charters per year, you have that one this year too. And then this one was from receipt of a complete application to getting a charter, of those that got a charter. Very useful thing to track. The one thing I remember looking at is we've noticed there's a lot of roadblocks to getting to complete, right? Where at that point, you would not be in any part of this graph because you have not fully applied. And that we're tracking now, right? And you put that up. And I know it can be acknowledged to pin down the exact start date sometimes, and you had to pick one. I know for a fact there are groups who've talked to us, had meetings, including with then Chairman Hood, but they don't consider themselves to have applied. They were window shopping, just talking about it. Maybe we could track that somewhere, just indications of interest, but it's good to be able to have a date when it starts, because getting to complete application has been a roadblock. People have walked away that would never, ever have appeared in this anywhere because nor would they have ever been rejected. Their charter was denied because they never got to a complete application. Much like applying to college, you can't be admitted or denied until you have a completed application. You know, test scores, you got to get your transcript sent. And colleges have a lot of incentives to have a lot of applications. So if a lot of people were getting stuck in that part where they never fully applied, they'll take actions to make that process easier, to make sure to make it clear. Here's what you have to do. Let's make it easy to do it. And so the people get stuck in it. If my college was having a lot of problems versus others, there's something wrong here, right? Because those people are not in our admissions rate at all. They're neither approved nor denied. I won't belabor the point. There was a group that had an unusual application. Interesting. I thought they were trying to do something different. And I agreed with the decision that to deny them the charter at that time. I agree with that. There was another reason. But a big part of the answer that they got was they didn't have any lending income in their initial phase. They could have added it, and they had many conversations with Cure. I have the documentation. They had face-to-face meetings. They gave the business plan, which I also have, and the dates that all these things were sent. And when they got denied for the charter later, and it was kicked back to them, they couldn't believe no one ever told them you have to have lending. I know most credit union groups do, so you don't have to mention it. But they couldn't imagine you're opening up your college envelopes. You know, am I going to get in? Am I going to get in? Imagine you spoke to the admissions director multiple times. Imagine you didn't think that you had to have your test scores sent. You didn't think you personally had to take action. Maybe you thought the college got it automatically, right? You'd be wrong. But imagine you said that multiple times to the admissions office, right? In writing. I think I've done everything I have. I don't need to take action for you to get my test scores. And then it finally came around. Did I get admitted? Did I get in? Did I go waitlisted? No, none of those. You never had to complete application. Why? Because you didn't your test scores. I literally told you 10 times that I didn't think. So that was, could they have been told, even though it was an unusual case, and most people have lending income, in your initial application, you have to have lending. Could they have been told that? Like, is there a universe in which someone had said, we look at your business plan, you know you have to have lending income, right? National Credit Union Act, our interpretation, your interpretation, which I consider correct.
Yes.
Mentions credit, so there's got to be something in there with credit. They were never told that, and they couldn't believe it. Months later, they got rejected, and one of the reasons was you didn't have lending. So we could have easily added that. Why didn't anybody tell us? We told them many times. Could they have been told that? You must have lending?
Yes. I find it hard to believe they were not told that.
They were absolutely stunned. And no one could find any documentation that they were. As a matter of fact, I have documentation the other way around. It's not in their business plan, it's not in their pro formas. I understand that that's what the Credit Union Act says, but anyway, they find out it was not, and the documentation I have says, they said, here's what we know, here's what we're planning on doing. Anyway, I'm glad we tracked the time it takes for a group to formally identify their field of membership until they successfully complete their application. That is a separate metric I think is very interesting. And let me ask you about the provisional charter. So I'm proud, myself and my advisor behind me, Sarah Bang, that was kind of our idea, but it is just an idea. We don't know if it's a eureka, right? Because, well, we can't get CDFI funds, we can't even apply until we're an institution. So I think we all agree the problem, but this is why we have, beta testing. How is it, was it a good idea? Is it working? Should we change it? Do we not have the right groups yet, or what?
Yeah, I'll take that question, thank you. I think, as with any pilot, you're going to find great things, and you're going to
Yep.
find things that,
That's why it's a pilot.
right,
Yeah.
don't work so well. I think with the organizing groups, it's still a big change for them from when they're working through the application and now they're open. And that's when the real work starts. We hear that all the time from the organizing groups. Wow, we've shifted from cure to the field. And there's a lot of things we need to comply with. There's a lot of things we need to do in order to get those credit union doors open, besides finding the capital. So it's a matter of education, the organizing groups, getting the right people in the positions and getting them trained up, besides finding the capital. So that's why they have 12 months during this period to do all of that work. And then at the end, we'll see if, number one, they obtain the capital that they signed for within their letter of understanding agreement, saying we commit to obtaining this amount of donated capital. And then the field makes a determination of, are you ready to open up your doors? And then we'll make an analysis at that point on how successful the pilot was.
Gotcha. I know we capped it at a certain number of these because it's a pilot.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
Okay. I know people bad. And just the basic, the idea that we thought was good, chicken and egg problem, has that actually been solved? Meaning when people say, I can get the money, I just need a charter, have those
That
checks
would-
come in right away? Did that actually work?
That hasn't yet happened.
We're not at that point yet.
We're not at that point yet.
Okay, because this doesn't work unless that's
We're
actually
still looking,
true.
yeah, it's still difficult
You need a
for
third party.
the organizing
to say-
group to find the money.
Right, don't just believe,
Yeah.
we'll get the money. Have
Yeah.
someone say, I'm a grant-giving operation, or I'm Treasury's fund. I will write a check the day I get this. You can, are you talking to the check writers to verify that, yes, these people actually will get the money? There is a chicken and egg
Oh,
sitch?
we
Right.
always verify.
Okay, and they don't have any obligation from our standpoint to do it, but
No.
they say, yes, it is my plan, if the Martha Credit Union gets a charter, that,
Correct.
they get the charter on Monday, I'll give them a check on Tuesday, right? That's what they say.
Yep.
But we haven't gotten to that point to see if it actually worked.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those other groups, the check writers, they're not going to stand around forever, so it's an incentive for everybody to get this done. I'll stop there. A lot of credit, I mentioned immigrants. There's actually, and you mentioned the Islamic finance. I remember learning sukuk. You know what that is? That is an Islamic bonds. We trade treasuries, government bonds in this country. That's mostly out of Dubai, a little bit in Singapore. There's that whole fascinating world of Islamic finance. Yeah. Governments have to raise money, and people raise money, and it's kind of like that. But anyway, it's a whole fascinating field. But this is why it's terrific that this country still has over 8,000 depository institutions, banks and credit unions. A lot of countries in the world, imagine all we have with Citi, Wells, B of A, and Wells Fargo. $4 trillion banks, right? Probably work all right if you had a solid job, direct deposit, spoke English, were an American citizen, had a social security number. It'd probably do okay. And that's what a lot of countries are. I lived in Australia. They have 4 banks, and the government won't let any of them merge because then you'd be down to 3. Over 98% of Canadians are one of 6 banks, right? That's how it is. The fact that we have ones that know the corn crop, they know the depreciation schedules by, they're all over this country. There's that. The ones that answer the phone in Haitian Creole in Florida, I assure you Citigroup will do that. And we want, what I mentioned when we talk about true financial inclusion, is letting any of these people have their own, okay? And when you look at the ones that are what we call ethnic credit unions, some of them are explicitly ethnic, like the 10 Ukrainian American credit unions, but a lot of others are de facto an ethnic group, because it may be a place of worship the very first one in America was an immigrant group, French Canadians. Now, it's not an ethnic French Canadian credit union, it's a church credit union, it's a French Catholic church. But it is, in fact, Knights of Columbus is not technically an ethnic credit union, but it was Italian-American men. The one last year, Alpha Kappa Alpha, right? That's not technically a thing, but it's an African-American sorority, one of the Divine Nine, right? Historically, HBCUs, so it's essentially a African-American women thing, even though by the way it applies is just this fraternal organization, right? Vice President Harris is a AKA member. I don't know if she joined the credit union, but she's an AKA from Howard. And what I care about is the groups now should have the same opportunity. You can't not notice that most of the ethnic credit unions or quasi-ethnic, like Knights of Columbus, it's from the earlier period of American immigration, right? Central Europe, Southern Europe. And post-1965, when this country kind of opened back up again, is primarily Asia and Latin America. Those people should have just as much chance as the Italians and Slavics and Poles did before. One of the benefits, last decade, from the countries from Mexico, India, China, Venezuela, Honduras, Guatemala at the top, and then last couple of years, separate, Operation Allies Welcome was Afghanistan from the war, from there, and Operation Uniting Ukrainians. One of those two, of Afghanistan, Ukraine, has the advantage of other people from that country came when it was easier to start a credit union, so they're Ukrainian-American credit unions. These people, they can work under that refugee program. From what I've been told and what I've seen, they're showing up often with very little English ability, second or third language after Russian, Ukrainian, credit invisible, no FICO, unemployed. If they had a job in Ukraine, they quit it to come here. And guess who's giving them a share account? And unsecured credit cards. Unsecured, because it's hard to operate in this life sometimes without a credit card. These people, and they're doing what generations of immigrants have done. They are hustling, they're doing what they can. You know, driving Uber Eats 70 hours a week. And their default rates, unsecured credit cards, think about this. Can't necessarily fill out the application in English. Literally no FICO history whatsoever, credit invisible, and unemployed. And their default rates are lower than the industry average for both credit unions and credit. Why? Well, because this is what credit unions do when they're done well. An affinity group, they know if they don't pay, first of all, it's going to be another Ukrainian that's going to come out of their pocket. And secondly, if you default on this credit card, I assure you, no one is ever going to give you one again. You're a long way. Feel free to walk into any of the big banks, and they serve a purpose, and say, hi, don't speak English, I don't have a job, I have zero credit history. Can I have an unsecured credit card? No way. And it's terrific. And I just think that that the Venezuelans, Hondurans, Pakistanis, et cetera, deserve the same chance to have that as the Poles, the Slovaks, the Italians, et cetera. That's just my view as to why I keep at this. Okay. A couple questions. So last year we had useful days of complete application to charter if it was granted. That other number, last couple of years, do you have an average length of time it took from when they kind of step one, they at least identify their field of membership, it's legit, from that to the completed application?
Yes, so I just want to,
I just threw a lot at you, sorry.
no, that's all right. I just want to restate, phase one is when the organizing group submits their paperwork to get their field of membership approved. And once their field of membership is approved and the type of charter, of course, that they're going to apply for, we invite them to start phase two. Phase two is the meat of the application. So that's business plan, marketing plan, pro forma statement, okay, and identification of capital. That's phase two. Phase three, it's basically wrapping it up, right? We've got to get the regular NCUA forms filled out. We complete the letter of understanding and agreement with the field staff, and then the charter issuance. So from phase one completion, when we've approved the field of membership, and I took those three institutions that were chartered in both 2024 and then 2023. So from phase one completion until they submitted the completed application, the average number of days was 860.
Okay, and
then 2023, from phase one completion until completed, phase one completion until they submitted a completed application, 860 days, and then in 2023, 627. And then the second set of numbers average from phase one application to charter approval was 1,187 days. But let me break it down further. 187 days total. Organizing group, out of that 1,187, they had the paperwork for 873 days. And then when they submitted it and we did our analysis, we had it for 314 days.
So that one, the one number that stands out there is 800 something. That's over 2 years. That's to get to a completed application.
That is
Right.
from phase one to a completed application submission.
So for over 2 years, there's a group that feels, and we feel, they are actively want to start a credit union, but they're not at the completed application phase. Okay.
Right, so what can happen is phase one, we approve them, and it might take them 6 months to get back with us to even submit an application. So it's, the data we can track, but the nuances
Oh, yeah.
is hard to be reflected
This
in
is
the
what-
numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when, this is what averages are for. I'm
Right.
going to suggest that so the FDIC puts the name, and they do it once they have a completed application, okay? They put the name of them, and you can get all their averages and means. I mean, if you want to, you can just export the Excel, and you can sort by all these things. I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, I wouldn't mind if we put averages and this sort of stuff up in the de novo area, okay? Maybe we can put high and low or something like that, because obviously averages can be thrown off by a weird situation. But I think it might be useful information, because a lot of people, the one thing I hear over and over, we don't really know where we are. Like, is this, we know it's not going to be, we're not going to open our doors tomorrow morning, but 10 years would be really bizarre, and none of our partners would stay with us. 5 years is really long. They want some kind of handle, and the easiest thing to do without passing judgment on their application is just say actual data of what's happened, right? Some of them are complex, some of them are not. Anyway, I think that maybe averages and that sort of data, I think, might be useful.
I thought that there were some plans already underway to achieve that.
So, yes, we are developing the requirements for a new charter system, which would take the application into a software
Automated,
program.
yeah.
Part of the software program would have a status tracker where the organizing group, not the public, but the organizing group could go in and see where they're at. So first phase passed, second phase in progress. You know, they can check along the way, third phase chartered. So they will have that within the actual application if that's developed.
And one of the annoying things to start anew is you got to have bylaws and policies, started. AI kind of helps with this, actually, but that's something that takes a lot of time. We were talking about sample templates, that for various credit unions. Do we have those? Are those provided to groups? Where can they find those?
Absolutely, on our website under new charters.
Yeah, so some of that paperwork, we have to create all these bylaws, what do we do? It might not be as hard as you think. And they are frequently changed once you're up and running, so you don't have to.
And a lot of times we partner organizing groups with newly chartered credit unions so they can learn from the group that just went through the process.
Is a nice thing about credit unions, how much they help each other. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you so much. Board Member Otsko?
Thank you. And thanks, Martha and Leilani, for the presentation. Thank you to everyone in CURE for the work that you all do. I know it's not just limited to the presentation today. You all provide TA to credit unions, manage the community development revolving loan fund program, serve as a resource to small credit unions, list goes on. So chartering new credit unions is integral to maintaining a resilient and enduring credit union system. The vice chair, for example, mentioned how our country is unique. We have thousands of depository institutions, including thousands of credit unions. And so chartering new credit unions is very much part of that. New credit unions allow for more individuals to gain access to greater financial opportunities, such as saving for retirement, buying a new home, getting a loan, getting a credit card. It also creates increased competition in our financial system, which I think is extremely important because that ultimately leads to credit unions looking for better ways to serve their members and attract new ones, and is important if we want to maintain the financial system, the banking system that we have in this country. So on that note, I support CURE having the resources that it needs to process applications in a timely manner, including the expansion of Capri, which I believe is the software system that you were referring to have better functionality so that credit
Correct.
unions, yeah, thanks, Martha. Credit unions, the organizing groups have more insight, and that you all and the staff have the resources to better handle the increased amount of applications, of underserved area applications, of other types of charter applications that you guys are handling. So your presentation showed a slight uptick in the application processing time for new charters, even though it's still much lower than what it was prior to 2021. So I would like to work with my fellow board members and your office to make sure the new chartering process is running smoothly. We're communicating with credit unions in a timely manner, that kind of thing. I also want to thank you for your work on processing applications for underserved areas. Credit unions being able to serve these areas despite their original fields of membership, I think speaks to the purpose of our system of cooperative credit, which is to provide credit to those of modest means. However, we do need to continue to ensure that credit unions are indeed serving those communities, especially since we've had a significant uptick in those applications since 2021. So I really appreciate the work that you all have done to improve the process so far, including making sure that credit unions are actually providing the required service facilities in underserved areas. Because ultimately this program exists to serve communities forgotten by the traditional bank system. And I want to make sure that we have not lost sight of that. So actually making sure people in underserved areas have a branch, a facility to go to get access to those services is really important. So appreciate all the work that you have done working with my office, my staff as well. I have no further questions, but look forward to our continued engagement on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Board Member Otska, and thank you to both you, Martha, and Leilani for your presentation. Before I close today, I just want to make a quick observation that this is, of course, the 90th anniversary of the Federal Credit Union Act occurred earlier this year. International Credit Union Day occurred last week. And as part of that, our team put out a new video that I encourage everybody to take a look at on our YouTube channel. You mentioned Franklin Delano Roosevelt earlier today, Vice Chairman Hallman, and he, a quote in that video says, "The test of our progress is not whether we add to the abundance of those who have so much, it is whether we provide enough for those who have so little." That is what credit unions are working to do. That is especially what new credit unions, low-income credit unions, community development credit unions are working to do. They're the ones that are providing the character loans, as I would frame it. They are the ones that are working to make sure that people of different faiths can get access to buy a home. They're the ones that are helping people who are incarcerated to maintain an account. We need to do all that we can to make sure that everybody in our financial system can have access to financial services. It will make it for a stabler democracy, a better democracy, and for us all. With that, that concludes our agenda today. There being no further business, we are hereby adjourned.